From the Llano Estacado to the valley, from the bayou to the bottomlands, and from the desert to the rolling plains, this is a seminar for a wide range. Welcome to the Soil and Crop Sciences Hour of Power. Today we have a special guest coming from the great rice growing region of Beaumont. And without further ado, I'm going to turn over to Dr. Gentry for his introduction.
So it's going to be hard to follow that, but I'll try and transition here. So it's my pleasure to introduce today's speaker, Dr. Fugen. And if you ever work with Fugen, he's a really great collaborator. So if you're interested in rice work, and some of the stuff he's doing, I definitely encourage you to reach out to him. Fugen is an associate professor of soil and crop nutrient management at the Texas A&M AgriLife Research Center in Beaumont. His research focuses on both conventional and organic rice production, and he also works on improving bioenergy sorghum and energy cane feedstock production through cultivar selection and nutrient management. And today he's going to talk with us about some of his really timely work on organic rice production. With that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Doe.
Thank you, Scott, and thank you, Dr. Gentry, for your nice words and introduction. And let me share the screen. Hopefully everyone can see it. Can everybody see my screen?
Looks good.
Okay, thank you. My name is Fugen Do, and today I would like to share some results on organic rice. And let's see. Okay. Here we go. First, let's look at some brief information on global organic production. This is information I collected from 2017, and looks globally, market value for organic selling. And from this, we can see United States actually was the dominant, consumption for organic food and related product, and followed by Germany, France, China, Italy, Canada, and other European countries. And for United States, if you look at a little details, here is for the results in the past 10 years. Here, the green bar shows the organic food growth or increasing rate, and then the maroon bar for the total food, increasing rate. And it was very evident. We can see organic food, increase higher than the corresponding total food consumption in the United States in the past 10 years, and peaked around like 2013 to 2014. But at least last year, it was still higher than the conventional food consumption increase. This is the percentage of organic food as a total food in the past 10 years, and still like perfect linear increasing at a step or a rate like 0.3% annually. And that's good for organic production. For organic consumption. Then if we look at global organic production or supply sector by region, and it was surprised to see the major player is from Oceania, like Australia or New Zealand, and then followed by Latin America and European, but North America or United States is just a little bit higher than Africa in terms of the land used for organic production. Then people will wonder, okay, why more like producers get into the organic production sector. Here are some challenges, or top 3 challenges, just summarize from last year's U.S. organic green, or how to keep it green, this report, and also identified by 2016 National Organic Research Agenda. And they identify the #1 challenge will be high cost of transition from whatever conventional farrow to the field, ready for organic production. It's mandatory, like 36 months. You cannot steal your product as conventional organic, and also you cannot apply any, not listed materials. Second one will be soil fertility and weed management, and also, how much kind of resource or support for organic production. Back to organic rice production in the United States, and from this map, people will be a little bit surprised, like organic rice production all over the country, and from coast to coast, and northeast, like Maine to Florida, and so almost, everywhere be produced except the middle ground, except, there are water limitations. So that's pretty much the distribution of organic rice production. And from this map, we can also see Texas and California, both are 2 major players. Here, the number means, how many growers. Texas like 82, and California 66, identified by the USDA, the organic program, and get the results. Overall, the organic rice production, in terms of the percentage of the conventional rice, just around like 1%, not much high. And the conventional rice production somehow around 3 million acres, and depends on year. Here in Arkansas, if you look here, and this is a major player for conventional rice production, but in terms of organic, Texas and California, top 2. So for organic rice production, the same field depends which kind of management, and they can go in and up one, like very poor like situation, not many rice standings and much the weeds and lots of standings. But if everything works very well, and you can see in the bottom the picture, like very beautiful rice, and very similar to like conventional field. Then what kind of management research we can work in and generate information to help our organic rice producers. Here is the hypothesis we are using for organic rice research. We just look at, the yield gap between organic and conventional rice production, and we want to, look at details from the yield components, and then say, okay, which kind of management practice we can tackling to identify to help improve the organic rice production. Generally, rice grain yield can be, subdivided into 4 different, yield components, like panicles per hectare, and spikelet per panicle, and field spikelet, because not all spikelet, available for rice. Some just, unfilled, and depends on variety or management, and also one-solid grain weight. And that's some term we use to, measure yield components. And according to our observation, we we were thinking, the panicle would be like a major factor, and we can tackle waste. So for panicles, pretty much determined by the seedlings per hectare and the tillers per seedlings, like tilling capacity for a specific cultivar or under the management practice. And also, not all tillers will be effective or became panicles. Some just, lost during the process, and not all became good panicles. From here, we were thinking, what kind of management practice we can tell with, and to test our hypothesis and how they can impact organic rice production. That's pretty much the whole hypothesis, and divided by three, major directions we are going to work on. Just show you where the center it is. Most of you probably already familiar, but for some students, they probably haven't been here. And the Beaumont is just located north, southeast of Texas, and in the border of Texas and Louisiana. And for people know a little bit about the hurricane, just past the Laura hurricane, and just impacted the border of Texas and Orange County, and here is Jefferson County, Beaumont located next to the Orange. So this is where we're in. And here is some information on the weather and the rainfall and air temperature during the rice growing season 2014 and 2015 for organic rice trial we set up. And depends on the year, we may have very different pattern in rainfall, but overall, here the temperature is high and very humid, especially in summer or during rice growing season. First thing first, let's look at how variety trial conducted in 2015. And the soil was a sealed genome soil, and we use the geoseeding, and for wheat or other crop planting. The seeding rate was used very high, and 40 seedlings per square feet or 431 seed per square meter. Set up 2 different nitrogen rates, and the manual applied to each pot. The organic fertilizer, or called soil amendment, was the product of the plant meat and feed meal, and the high nitrogen content, total nitrogen 13%, and seed treatment used OMI, RI, organic, certified organic material research institute certified plant growth regulate, or GA, gibberellin acid, and pre-treated. The purpose is trying to promote rice emergence to compete with wheat. And the planting day will be in July, and harvesting early November. It was sort of delayed the planting in 2015 because we had other field operations, and this one got somehow delayed. And here, brief information on which kind of variety we selected or tried. We included the aromatic and conventional one, inbreds and hybrids, long grain and medium grain. The purpose is, we had organic advisory board, and they consisted of different organic rice producers or organic industrial consultants. They provide kind of information or suggestions, and then we including, select this kind of cultivars or varieties for testing. Here are some explanations on how we define the yield components. This is a brief ANOVA table for variety trial, and we had variety and nitrogen, the interaction and full balanced design to test the grain yield and yield components and the milling quality. We were very interested to see how different variety affect the grain yield or their performance. Here, the green bar for the control or no nitrogen, and the green bar for the high nitrogen. And then we can see here the XP753 or CLXL745 both had relatively highest grain yield compared to other varieties. And the lowest with the Jasmine 2, actually it's aromatic rice. And here, the highest one were hybrid rice. And we could see, hybrids had an advantage, yield advantage compared inbreds, selected inbreds. But another, the Tesla also in Rondo had a good performance too. Tesla 2 is medium, and Rondo is long grain, and both had a good yield performance too. And then we look at how variety effect on panicle effectiveness. Here, I define the panicle effectiveness is a ratio of panicles to the seedlings, because I want to standardize or normalize panicles. And then we can see, okay, what will be the chilling or capacity. From this slide, we can see most is arranged from 1 to 2.5. This is pretty much for organic rice. For conventional rice will be much higher, chilling and panicle rate, panicle effectiveness. That will be very different. Depends on nutrient supply and other management practice. In fact, it was a little bit surprised we didn't see, very low for the Jasmine 2, according to their low yield. Then we look at other yield components, the field spikelet, and we saw a little bit low for the Jasmine 2, but again, we didn't see much high value for the hybrids. And let's look at another yield component, the 1,000 grain weight. Looks, except the Jasmine 2, most looks very close, and also we can see Tesla and Rondo actually in a slightly, high in the grain weight than the hybrids. Another one we want to introduce or talk about was on the harvest index, means like how much, total biomass will be effective, like be in the form of the grain or the carbohydrates, allocation, how much going to rice straw, which will not be harvestable, and going rice, the grain will be economically, interesting. I put the line, reference line 0.5. For most of the conventional rice, we had a 0.5 around, but here looks like, except a couple of cases, most like slightly low, but constantly, the relative high variation, statistically there was still no difference between 0.5 and what we observed for the organic rice and harvest index. Okay, last one was on the whole grain, on the milling quality, and we are expecting, the high in the banner, because the selling price for organic rice will be impacted by this index too. And the GSM 85, and especially the test line 2 had the lowest the mean quality, just around 30%. Here, even including for the hybrids, around like 55 to 60%. So that was something good, and that's pretty much the results for the variety trial. And not any individual, yield component could provide a very deceivable, information. Excuse me, which one we can identify. But overall, we could see hybrids had yield components. And according to our field observation, we could see, the a little bit tall, and the growing or maturing day was slightly late and longer than some early maturity varieties. This gives them a little bit of advantage, and also studies from conventional rice indicate organic rice had advantage in taking or uptake soil nutrient, especially a little bit, deep soil nutrient. That's, put all this together probably make it, the yield advantage or benefits. Second one, we want to decide, okay, how seeding rate may affect organic rice production, because usually for producers, they choose which kind of variety. And second question is how much I want to plant to achieve, not an yield potential, but at least, some high yield for organic rice production. This trial was conducted 2014 and 2015, just published this year, and again, we used 7 different rates, and here I highlighted 108. This was recommended for hybrids, for conventional rice hybrids, and 215 was recommended for inbreds and conventional, starting and production. Here we try to increase to a little bit higher and see how their performance giving kind of high seeding rate. This was a little bit busy in the ANOVA table, and because our hypothesis would be increasing the seeding rate, we're expecting increase the panicles, and we were lucky we can see, high ranking and low ranking interactions. So we can focus on the main effect instead of marginal effect. And then we can look at, the yield and yield components. This was for 2 years, and again, this above the orange one for the hybrids, and the blue one for the inbreds procedure, and compared inbreds and hybrids had a high yield. And also, we're more interested in how seeding rate impact organic rice grain yield. Pretty much linear increased, and for both 2014 and 15 for both entries. That would be interesting. Even for 2015, we had a slightly bigger variations. We also interested in see how the tillers and panicle density. That's something we are interested in. Here using 2014 and May 15 and June 13. Here still count the tillers, and back to here we got heading and panicles. So that's we call the tiller or panicles. And we can see increasing the seeding rate when linearly increase that tiller or panicle, that density or numbers. That was good, and more or less, confirmed our hypothesis. And the second one, how they impact on yield components. Here we look at the number of spikelet, like per panicle, and also like percentage of field grain. And increasing the seeding rate, we saw decreasing for the hybrids and a slight decreasing for the inbreds, and except this one. For the percentage of field grain, except the inbreds and the hybrids, decrease with increasing of the seeding rate. The second year, 2015, and had similar patterns. And our harvest index more or less, less variation compared to other, especially tiller or panicle density, and especially 2015. So we will see, the seeding rate had impact just like the variety. Their impact on the yield components were not consistent. Some may increasing, some may, slightly decreasing, just because the internal competition of the photosynthesis product or other, allocations. Here is on the milling quality. Milling quality was more or less like harvest index, pretty much stable, and again, these inbreds had a high milling quality and tested hybrids for both years were quite consistent, and this kind of pattern were also observed like in 2014 and 15 in our conventional rice production. That was consistent information between both, production systems. I want to spend a couple of slides to talk a little bit, touch the economic analysis. What would be optimal seeding rate in terms of economic analysis. Here are some function or equation used by this analysis, and another is the function or definition. What kind of the information used, the rice price and the procedure and hybrid much higher, almost 10 times higher for the hybrids. That's more or less the concern for producers because of the seed cost. And according to that analysis, I identified this is how much the pounds for procedure, the conventional one, for the hybrid, and 42 pounds, and could give kind of the optimal economical return. And again, the hybrids, even high yield seed cost, still get a high economical return. That sounds quite interesting. And also looking at the different seeding rate and the different perspective, looking at the economic return. Okay, that's pretty much. We had 2 field trials, and one was on the variety evaluation, and the second one on nitrogen rate trial. I'm sorry, for seeding rate. Then we look at the nitrogen fertilization, because as previously we identified soil fertility on nutrient and weight measurement will be, big challenge on top 3 challenges for organic rice producers. Before we choose which kind of soil amendments or organic fertilizer, we want to know their performance in terms of the nutrient supply, because unlike synthetic fertilizers like urea, like ammonia sulfate, or other kind of chemicals, they can provide a nutrient very quickly and very thoroughly. That means if we have 100 pounds of urea, that means they should be in the form of available, don't need other process. But it's not true for the soil amendments or organic fertilizer. They have to be through, most of their components can be through the soil process. Usually we call it like decomposition or nitrogen mineralization, and transform the organic nitrogen into lay-by or available nitrogen like ammonia or nitrate. It depends on the soil conditions. Therefore, we selected 6 different listed amendments to look at their performance. Here just show their total the macronutrient content (NPK) and low from like 3% to high like 17% for NatureSafe. And now let's look at how their performance. Here is information on field testing. We use the normal one and use the cockatoo. The study was conducted almost 10 years ago, more than 10 years actually, 2010. Then we, according to the results, can decide, okay, which one looks like more effective in terms of nitrogen supply. Here, the Y represents the green yield. X means how much total nitrogen we applied. So we want to see the higher slope, means like more responsive or more capability to provide the nitrogen to organic rice. Only the maximum in the compost, it was not surprised. We could see, almost, close to zero, negative, slope. And highest with the NatureSafe and second one, residue. Actually, the major material for NatureSafe was from meat and blood and meat and laser meal. And residue used part of NatureSafe product and mixed with the poultry and produced. This is the information got from the personal communication with the company, and so we are going to test using NatureSafe or residue, for nitrogen rate testing. This is a little bit, information on the field trial. We tested 2 varieties, Tensionine 2 and hybrid XP753. Based on the variety evaluation, looks both, this inbred and this hybrid had high yielding performance. And from the seeding rate, we determined the highest seeding rate looks like it had the highest yield potential. Then we look at 5 different nitrogen rates. We are going to test and look at the ANOVA table and for 2015 and great yield and yield and component analysis. Most had the interaction, nitrogen rate, and the variety except the panicle effectiveness. This one actually was very similar to what we just talked about, the seeding rate and increasing the nitrogen application rate from 0 to 280 total nitrogen per hectare. Actually, this was a very high rate. And the yield increased from around 3,000 kilogram per hectare to more than 8,000. That was quite high. And the variety had a sort of impact, but not always consistent. There are some variation exists. Next, when we look at how different nitrogen rate affect on panicle effectiveness, a little surprised we didn't see this one was higher than like 2 or 3. Based on our hypothesis, if we supply sufficient nitrogen, at least high nitrogen rate at 280, we were expecting we get more like panicles, and because nitrogen could promote killing and develop high panicle rate, but we didn't see pretty much around 1 to 1.5. Second one on the nitrogen rate on the field green. For the test line, we could see the positive or increasing effect from the nitrogen rate, but we didn't see much kind of pattern for the hybrids. But overall, the hybrids had quite high in the field green, a percentage more than 85% in most cases. Then we look at how the nitrogen rate affect 1,000 rice grain and weight. And the data looks like quite consistent, and except the control for the hybrid, most cases is close to like 26 gram per 1,000 grains. And for the Tensionite had a little bit lower, but again, there was no kind of evident pattern impacted by the nitrogen. This was also observed from the conventional rice production. Usually, the 1,000 rice grain weight was more impacted by the cultivar itself, and instead of by the management practice. Again, on the harvest index, again, most here high, slightly higher than 0.5. That was good, and we will see that means more photosynthesis product allocated to rice grain for harvesting for economic return. That was good. Then we look at how nitrogen rate affect on the milling quality on the whole grain. Interesting. We see quite a low milling quality for the hybrids, and it was a bit surprising. We see the Tensionite, had a little bit high and a low nitrogen rate, and going quite low back to high nitrogen rate. This may be more or less like impacted by the delayed harvesting and delayed planting. This could be the part of the rhythm. Usually, experience delayed harvesting or rice getting too dry. It could affect the milling quality. That's pretty much we had information for the nitrogen rate effect on rice production, organic rice production. For producers or the National Organic Program, they also promoting and enhance like cover crops. Here we look at winter cover crops, how they can help to promote organic rise through increase the soil fertility. And then we also tested, in 2012, 2013, and 2014. Here shows the Dorano white clover planted in our organic field, and this one shows ryegrass, slightly, delaying plant down or harvest, because we see already, the seed comes out. The biomass looks quite well, and the dry biomass yield for clover was around 5,000 pounds per acre, and ryegrass slightly higher than that. And we didn't see the yield advantage planting either white clover or ryegrass compared to the fallow. I didn't show the photo. Actually, we collected the biomass from the fallow, and we also get the results for the dry biomass was around 4,500 pounds per acre. That means the dry biomass yield from the treatment clover and ryegrass compared to the controlled fallow and close, because here the winter was warm in the time and moist, so the weeds, we can call weeds or volunteer, cover crop, they come up and all like growing very well. And we didn't see much the advantage, and then we trying to figure out to think, okay, what cause kind of difference, or what their difference in terms of the nitrogen supply. Then we conducted a lab incubation trial. We use different cover crop application rate in a mixture. Here we set up temperature like 25 degrees C, and the moisture uses the optimum 50% field water holding capacity. So why we didn't use the flooded condition? Because the production system here was we planted a winter cover crop like in late September or October, then harvest in late February or March, and then let the biomass, because it was very big biomass, then let them decompose for a while, usually like around a month. If we planted too quickly, like for example, after a couple of weeks, plant down a cover crop, what will happen? Because the field had too much biomass, we tried 1 year. When we tried to geoseeding, the rice seed will not incorporate into the soil because we planted only 0.5 inches. We don't want to leave the seed just on the surface, and also too much biomass, if not decompose, they can affect, the germination or emergence of the planted seed. That's, we left like 1 month pretty much under nature condition, somehow like aerobic. So we set up a 50% field water holding capacity. We also tested, different cover crop residue mixing. One hypothesis here, according to other studies, they indicate cover crop mixing have some advantage in terms of nutrient supply or wind suppression. So, for example, if we see the term C7R3, means 70% of clover and 30% of ryegrass in terms of the dry biomass, the ratio. And soil microbiomass common in nitrogen estimated by crop form fumigation and extraction. This is some property of the cover crop in soil microbiome, simulation we tested now. Except the ryegrass and the fallow and the clover actually very close. Also, we observed, lots of volunteer clover from the fallow on the control field. This is a little bit busy, for the ANOVA table for the incubation cover crop trial study analysis. We look at ammonia nitrate and total inorganic nitrogen. Let's look at the different incubation and the different cover crop residue, treatment. CK means the control. We didn't put anything in ryegrass, pure ryegrass. C3, 30% of clover, 70% of ryegrass residue. Fallow, and 70% clover, 30% ryegrass, 100% of the pure clover residue in different ways, different incubation days. And the CO2 was, produced involved in normally because more time and more biomass and get more CO2. And then this is indicated their decomposition rate very quickly drop. That means more labor and carbon released in very short term, maybe like a week, and going under slow decomposition process. Cover crop mixing and residue application rate on cumulative CO2 increasing application rate. We saw linear increase for all these. There are some variation depends on quality of the material we incorporate. This is one of soil microbiome carbon and nitrogen. It was a little bit interesting. We see a fallow in a blue line or blue point, and both at the top, and the clover here in the bottom, for the soil microbiome nitrogen in between. This is more or less probably impacted by the cover crop, quality and how much we added along with incubation time. We only measure it, one time 7 days after incubation. This is something we are very interested in. This we want to see more like nitrogen released from the material. First, we see the clover, pure clover, and the CK is orange color, used for all these 5 different, residue treatment. At the end of incubation, around here 28 days, we could see only 2 points or 2 treatments, 0.6 and 1.2 clover, had a slightly high total inorganic nitrogen compared to the control, but none happened to other treatments. That means the soil nitrogen, soil indigenous nitrogen, was immobilized by this decomposition process, and it depends on the quality. We could see high ryegrass content of pure, ryegrass. We couldn't detect much of the nitrogen, inorganic nitrogen in the soil. But we are expecting with extending incubation time, we could expect to see more inorganic nitrogen will be released. This will be, the future research or something we want to test again. And this means something probably is good for organic rice production. And because in here, in time, we are planting rice, organic rice, and then the inorganic nitrogen could be released slowly and could be supplied to rice. But to which kind of degree and the optimal time to terminate the cover crop looks we still need more studies to identify what is the best time. Okay, and we look at the summary from these 4 plus 1 incubation, 4 field trials with incubation. Rice variety had a significant effect on organic rice production and grain yield. Usually, the hybrids had a yield advantage. Increasing the seeding rate even much higher compared to recommended for conventional rice, we couldn't see significant effect on the rice grain yield. Different soil amendments had different performance in terms of nutrient supply or promoting the rice grain. And for the test soil amendment, rice yield increased linearly with increasing the nitrogen application rate. And but still, economic analysis needed to be conducted to determine which one is still, profitable for organic rice producers. Our short and incubation study indicate cover crop at low rates starting to release nitrogen. This is probably a good, setup or application rate. And the more study looks like needed. And what we are going to do in the future, soil amendment, splitting, and timing. Here, I want to see experiment why we want to conduct the soil amendment splitting and giving kind of nitrogen application. Maybe, with splitting has some yield advantage. All our study we conducted just apply at a base time, 1 time. And second, the timing. Timing means if we have very limited nitrogen application or low application rate, when would be the optimal time in terms of yield increasing? Because not like synthetic fertilizer, it takes time, and then we probably want to find, okay, what is the best time in the base or in the 4, 5, like maximum tillering or other stages. And need more study to get information. And the row spacing. Row spacing, different row spacing probably can fully using the soil and indigenous nitrogen or fertilizer, and also can be more effective in terms of the weed control. Currently, we set up a 7 inch or 7.5 inches for organic rice study. This kind of information is generated for conventional rice production, may not be optimal for organic rice production. Even all working very well, we want to test our producers' field on farmer trial, because the different skill probably affect our management practice. And this, if we put on farmer, and this one best demonstration for extension or outreach purpose. Soil fertility improvement. So far, we pretty much rely on sort of, I would call it, fast or expensive fertility management using soil amendments. But from the long term, we want to look at a strategy, how we can improve the soil fertility, either using, what we already tested, the winter cover crops, or maybe other cropping systems and to build more soil carbon and increase the soil health. The big challenge here is hot and humid whole season, and the decomposition rate will not be low compared northeast and the other states. One time when I was in the ASA meeting, one colleague from Wisconsin, she mentioned, oh, we had too much soil carbon in soil. We didn't see any response from naturally we put the organic fuel, but so far it's not the case for, we test organic rice production system. With that, I want to acknowledge, my colleagues and the students and for their contribution for this, different field trials project and the financial support from USD, EOSR, and NIFA programs. Thank you for your attention from your busy schedule, and I would like to take any questions.
Good job. Thank you very much, Fugen. Questions?
Hi, I have a question.
Yes.
Dr. Fugen, thank you very much for your talk. And as you mentioned, we see an increase of yield when you apply nitrogen, when you increase the rates of nitrogen on the soil. So I was wondering if it is economically viable to start adding ammonia oxidizing bacteria into the root systems of those rice varieties or hybrids that you were testing, to see if that would be beneficial to the organic production.
Okay, the question is, if we add some microbial, kind of the product, can we promote the nitrogen supply to rice production? We actually, I did present the results in 2010. We tested one OMI certified project with the compost, and another one was called True Organic. Actually, it was just 1 year data. We didn't see kind of beneficial.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Shakira asks, are there yield differences between upland, lowland, or paddy types of hybrids in organic production?
I haven't done this kind of study. Based on the other studies, they say most highest yield for paddy or conventional flooded rice compared to upland, except you have some specifically breeded the varieties for that one. And also upland, usually we call it rain-fed, still depends, which kind of stress. If the stress is not that severe, especially during some critical stage, the yield probably comparable to, flooded or paddy rice. My colleague, Dr. Dante, he conducted a study and looked at water stress at like AWD or somehow like that, and found at least for some varieties had been a similar or comparable yield. 2014, I did a small greenhouse study and used two conventional. I didn't use hybrids, and we saw depends the water stress. It had a similar one, but usually, we expecting hybrids maybe more resistant to water stress, so their performance will be similar.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Other questions? I have one. Is it profitable to produce organic rice? I mean, how long do you have to stay in it? If it takes 3 years to get the buy-in, Seems like a tough market to get into.
Exactly. And the first barrier is the 3-year, mandatory. You have to be like in transition process. In some organic rice producer in Texas, I have been in contact. They choose like, okay, they went to the field, already been like in federal for 3 years. So they didn't call off the penalty, or transition cost. They can produce and sell as organic rice. Another maybe a small cost is certification. They need to pay like $1,000 to apply. Certification depends the acreage. And then here, like true organic and other producers, they couldn't make a profitable. Depends which kind of niche market they could contract and find out. This is probably the top one challenge or risk. If you like decide going organic, 3 years later transition, the price, the premium price dropped significantly. You probably going some, lost money or bankruptcy.
Right.
That's another challenge, and people talking about, okay, they need a sort of long-term contract to make guarantee after 3 years, the selling is still profitable.
I see. Very good. Other questions? Going once?
So, food,
Yeah.
you mentioned a lot of things that you've tried and looked at and moved on. So you have a pretty good idea on how to manage this stuff now. But where do you see potential big improvements coming in how we manage rice? What do you see as next steps and maybe where it can go in the future?
For the organic rice, I want to say it takes like a comprehensive, but the one I haven't touched is another challenge is with the expression, with the control. That means the rotation or what kind of cropping system need to be developed, because our study here pretty much just 1 or 2 years. And back 2014, I conducted a continuous rise, and I found, okay, the yield dropped significantly for that field. And also based on the communication with other producers, usually they did a kind of rotation or other, system. That's I want to say. Cropping system will be next one, in terms of the management. And if the market is still very strong, according to what I predict, like in 2020, this year survey, I want to see organic rice could be a good, direction for some producers.
Great. Any other questions? Well, thanks again for going. You did an excellent job.
Thank you.
And as for the audience, we'll be back again, same time, same channel, same day, next week. Signing off.
Have a good one.
Thank you. Have done.